My niece secretly recorded our family game night and posted it online. In the video, my mom mocked my embarrassing career while everyone laughed. I've been supporting her financially for years, so I cut her off finally. I, 34M, never thought a simple family game night would destroy the relationship I had with my mother forever. But sometimes the truth has a way of revealing itself when you least expect it. It started on a Saturday evening 3 weeks ago. My sister had organized one of our monthly family gatherings at Mom's house. The usual suspects were there: my sister, her husband, their teenage daughter, my younger brother, and of course Mom. I'd driven over after finishing a particularly long day at my animation studio, exhausted, but looking forward to some downtime with family. We'd been doing these game nights for about 2 years now, ever since Dad passed away. Mom had been struggling with loneliness, and these gatherings seemed to lift her spirits. I always made sure to attend, no matter how busy my schedule got. Work had been incredibly demanding lately. I was in the middle of producing an animated short film that had caught the attention of several streaming platforms. The project was my biggest break yet, but the stress was eating me alive. The evening began normally enough. We played charades first, then moved on to some card games. Mom seemed to be in particularly good spirits, laughing louder than usual and making jokes at everyone's expense. I should have paid more attention to the way she kept glancing at me with this odd smirk. During our second round of cards, my niece was sprawled on the couch with her phone, as teenagers tend to do. I noticed she had it propped up at an angle, but didn't think much of it. Kids these days are always recording something or other for their social media accounts. The conversation naturally drifted toward work, as it often does among adults. My brother mentioned his recent promotion at the accounting firm, and my sister talked about her new position at the marketing company. When the attention turned to me, I mentioned how the animation project was going well and that we were in talks with some major platforms. That's when Mom's expression changed. She got this look in her eyes that I'd seen before, a mixture of amusement and condescension that usually preceded one of her cutting remarks. She asked me, with exaggerated concern, if I was ever going to get a real job or if I planned to keep playing with cartoons forever. The room went quiet for a moment. I felt my face flush, but I tried to keep my voice steady as I explained that animation was my career, that I'd been working professionally for over a decade, and that this particular project could be a major breakthrough. Mom laughed then, not a warm, motherly laugh, but something sharp and dismissive. She turned to my siblings and asked them if they could believe their brother was still chasing childhood dreams at his age. She said something about how embarrassing it was to tell her friends that her son made cartoons for a living, especially when her other children had respectable careers. My sister and brother exchanged uncomfortable glances, but then my sister started laughing too. She made some comment about how I'd always been the dreamer of the family, living in my own little fantasy world. My brother joined in, adding that maybe it was time I grew up and got serious about life. The words hit me like physical blows. I sat there, stunned, as my own family mocked the career I'd spent years building. Mom continued her tirade, saying she was embarrassed to mention what I did for work when people asked about her children. She wondered aloud when I'd finally accept that my little hobby wasn't a real profession and get a job that actually mattered. I wanted to defend myself, to explain everything I'd accomplished, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I excused myself early, claiming I had work to finish. The drive home was a blur of hurt and anger. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to push the incident out of my mind. I threw myself into work, staying late at the studio and avoiding family calls. The animation project was reaching a critical phase, and the streaming platform executives were impressed with our progress. Ironically, the very work my family had dismissed was generating more income than I'd ever made before. Then my phone started buzzing with notifications. At first, I ignored them, but they kept coming, message after message from friends, colleagues, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Finally, I checked my phone and found dozens of messages asking if I was okay, along with links to a TikTok video. My blood turned to ice when I opened the link. There was my niece's account, and the video had already accumulated over 50,000 views. The caption read something about toxic family dynamics and embarrassing relatives. She'd recorded the entire conversation from that night, with the camera focused directly on me during the most humiliating moments. The video captured everything: Mom's dismissive laughter, my siblings joining in, my obvious discomfort, and my pathetic attempt to defend myself. But what made it worse were the comments. Thousands of strangers were dissecting my life, some sympathizing with me, others agreeing with my family that animation wasn't a real career. My professional reputation, which I'd spent years carefully building, was now subject to public scrutiny and ridicule. I called my niece immediately, demanding she take the video down. She seemed surprised by my reaction, claiming she thought it was funny and that everyone would get a good laugh out of it. She said she didn't see what the big deal was, since it was just family joking around. When I explained how humiliated I felt and how this could damage my career, she reluctantly agreed to delete it, but the damage was already done. Screenshots and screen recordings had already started circulating. The next few days were a nightmare. Colleagues at the studio had seen the video, and while most were supportive, I could see the pity in their eyes. Some of the younger animators started treating me differently, as if I were this sad figure who couldn't even command respect from his own family. The streaming platform executives, thankfully, seemed unaware of the situation, but I lived in constant fear that it would reach them too. But what hurt most was the silence from my family. Not one of them reached out to apologize or check if I was okay. It was as if that night had never happened, as if publicly humiliating me was just another family joke they'd already forgotten. That's when I started thinking about the money. For the past 6 years, ever since Dad died, I'd been sending Mom a monthly check for $1,500. Her Social Security and small pension weren't enough to cover all her expenses, and I'd stepped in without hesitation. My siblings knew about this arrangement, but they'd never offered to contribute. They had their own expenses, they claimed, mortgages, kids' college funds, car payments. The responsibility had fallen entirely on me. Beyond the monthly support, there were the extras. When Mom's car needed repairs, I paid for them. When she wanted to redecorate her living room, I covered the costs. Her medication copays, dental work, even her subscription services. I'd been handling all of it without complaint. Over the years, I'd given her close to $100,000. And this was how she repaid me. By mocking my career, dismissing my life's work, and allowing her granddaughter to broadcast my humiliation to the world. I spent a weekend going through my financial records, calculating exactly how much I'd contributed to Mom's life. The numbers were staggering. While my siblings built their savings and invested in their futures, I'd been sacrificing my own financial security to ensure Mom was comfortable. The decision came to me gradually, then all at once. I wasn't going to continue funding the lifestyle of someone who had so little respect for me. On Monday morning, I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfer to Mom's account. Then I sat down and wrote her a letter, not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter that I mailed to her house. In the letter, I explained how deeply hurt I was by her comments and her reaction to my niece's video. I told her about the professional embarrassment I'd endured and how her lack of support during this difficult time had affected me. I informed her that I would no longer be providing financial assistance, and that she would need to make alternative arrangements for her expenses. I kept the tone respectful but firm. I didn't want to be cruel, but I needed her to understand that actions have consequences. The response came faster than I'd expected. Mom called me 2 days later, and I could hear the panic in her voice. She asked if I was serious about cutting off the money, and when I confirmed that I was, she started crying. She said she couldn't afford her mortgage payments without my help, that she'd have to move out of the house she'd shared with Dad. I felt a pang of guilt, but I reminded myself of how she'd treated me. I told her she should have thought about that before humiliating me in front of my niece's entire social media following. When she tried to downplay the incident, saying it was just family teasing, I cut her off. I explained that her definition of teasing had cost me professional respect and personal dignity. She tried a different approach then, apologizing and promising it would never happen again. But the apology felt hollow, forced by circumstance rather than genuine remorse. She was sorry about the consequences, not about her actions. I told her I needed time to think about whether our relationship could be repaired, but that for now, the financial support would stop. Update 1. The fallout from my decision was swift and predictable. My siblings called me within hours of Mom contacting them about her financial situation. My sister was furious, accusing me of being petty and vindictive. She said family was supposed to stick together through thick and thin, and that I was abandoning Mom when she needed me most. My brother took a more practical approach, asking how much money Mom needed and whether we could work out some kind of payment plan between the three of us. When I told him the exact amount I'd been contributing monthly, plus all the extras over the years, he went quiet. I don't think he'd realized the full extent of my financial support. I asked them both directly why they'd never offered to help with Mom's expenses if family was so important to them. My sister claimed she was saving for her daughter's college education, while my brother mentioned his recent home renovation. Both of them had reasonable explanations for why they couldn't contribute, but their reasons highlighted exactly what I'd been sacrificing all these years. The conversation with my siblings ended badly. My sister accused me of using money to manipulate the family, while my brother tried to guilt me into reconsidering by talking about Dad and what he would have wanted. Neither of them acknowledged their role in that humiliating game night or showed any understanding of why I was hurt. Meanwhile, the TikTok video continued to haunt me. Despite my niece deleting the original post, copies had spread to other platforms. Someone had even created a reaction video, analyzing the family dynamics and psychoanalyzing my relationship with my mother. The animation community is smaller than people realize, and word was starting to spread through professional circles. The streaming platform executives, thankfully, remained unaware of the situation, and my project continued moving forward. But I found myself constantly anxious, checking social media obsessively, and wondering if my professional reputation would survive this public embarrassment. Mom tried calling several more times, each conversation following the same pattern. She'd start with apologies, then move to guilt, and finally end with threats about what would happen if I didn't resume the payments. She mentioned having to sell the house, moving in with one of my siblings, or even considering a reverse mortgage. Each call left me feeling more conflicted, but also more resolved. 3 weeks after cutting off the payments, I received a text from my niece. She apologized for posting the video and said she hadn't realized how much trouble it would cause. She claimed she thought it was just funny family content and didn't understand why everyone was so upset. Her apology felt genuine, but it was too little, too late. Update 2. A month passed, and the family dynamics had shifted dramatically. Mom had indeed put her house on the market, but the real estate agent suggested some updates and repairs that would cost several $1,000s. Without my financial backing, she couldn't afford them. My sister and brother finally stepped up, each contributing $500 monthly to help with Mom's basic expenses. But this $1,000 combined contribution was still $500 short of what I'd been providing, and it didn't cover any of the extras Mom had grown accustomed to. The reality of managing Mom's actual financial needs had apparently been eye-opening for my siblings. My sister complained constantly about the burden, mentioning how tight money would be now that they were helping Mom. My brother started questioning some of Mom's expenses, asking why she needed premium cable packages and subscription services if money was so tight. I watched this unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Part of me was vindicated. My siblings were finally understanding the sacrifices I'd been making for years. But another part of me felt guilty seeing Mom struggle and my siblings stress about money. The professional situation had stabilized somewhat. The initial wave of social media attention had died down, and most of my colleagues had moved on to other topics. The streaming platform deal was progressing well, and there was talk of additional projects if this one succeeded. But the family relationships remained fractured. Mom had stopped calling me directly, though I heard through my siblings that she was hurt and confused by my decision. She apparently couldn't understand why I was being so sensitive about what she considered harmless family joking. My niece had reached out a few more times, trying to apologize and asking if we could rebuild our relationship. I appreciated her efforts, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. The damage to my reputation and self-esteem was still too fresh. During this period, I had time to reflect on the entire situation. The money had never been just about helping Mom. It had been about feeling valued and appreciated by my family. When they mocked my career and dismissed my life's work, they'd essentially rejected everything I'd sacrificed for them. I realized that my relationship with my family had been fundamentally unbalanced. I'd been the giver, always available to solve problems and provide support, while they'd been the takers, comfortable accepting my help but unwilling to reciprocate with basic respect and understanding. Update 3. 2 months after cutting off financial support, I received an unexpected visit from Mom. She showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, looking tired and older than I remembered. She asked if we could talk, and despite my reservations, I let her in. The conversation was different from our previous interactions. Mom seemed genuinely remorseful, not just about the financial consequences, but about how her words had affected me. She admitted that she'd never fully understood what I did for work or how successful I'd become. She said she'd always seen animation as something childish because she associated it with Saturday morning cartoons from her own childhood. She told me about her own fears and insecurities, how she worried about being judged by her friends and neighbors, how she sometimes felt like she'd failed as a mother because her children were so different from what she'd expected. She acknowledged that her comments that night came from her own anxiety about not understanding my career, not from any real belief that my work was worthless. The apology felt more genuine than her previous attempts, but I wasn't ready to immediately forgive and forget. I told her that while I appreciated her honesty, the damage from that night and her subsequent response had fundamentally changed how I viewed our relationship. She asked what it would take for us to rebuild our connection. I told her it would require time, genuine effort to understand and respect my career, and acknowledgement that her actions had real consequences. I also made it clear that any future financial support would be structured differently, not as automatic monthly payments, but as assistance for specific, necessary expenses after discussion and agreement. Mom agreed to these terms, though I could see it was difficult for her to accept that our relationship would never return to its previous dynamic. My siblings' reactions to Mom's visit were mixed. My sister remained somewhat hostile, still viewing my actions as disproportionate punishment for what she considered a minor incident. My brother seemed more understanding, particularly after dealing with Mom's financial needs firsthand for 2 months. The streaming platform deal had been finalized by this point, and my animation project was set to premiere in 3 months. The success had given me more confidence in my career choice and helped validate all the years I'd spent building my skills and reputation. I'd also started therapy to work through the family dynamics and my own issues with boundaries and self-worth. The therapist helped me understand that my pattern of financial support had been partly motivated by a need for approval and acceptance, and that my family's behavior, while hurtful, was consistent with the dynamic I'd helped establish. Looking back on the entire situation, I realized that cutting off financial support had been necessary not just as consequences for my family's behavior, but as a way for me to establish healthier boundaries and relationships. The viral video had faded from public attention, though it occasionally resurfaced in my social media memories like an unwanted reminder. My professional reputation had recovered, and if anything, the success of my current project had elevated my standing in the animation community. As for my relationship with my family, it remained complicated. Mom and I were slowly rebuilding trust, but it would take time to fully repair the damage. My siblings and I maintained cordial but distant relationships, with an unspoken understanding that things had permanently changed. My niece had matured significantly through this experience, gaining a better understanding of how social media could impact real relationships. She'd started asking permission before posting content involving family members, and had become more thoughtful about the potential consequences of her online activities. The financial aspect had also reached a new equilibrium. I occasionally helped Mom with specific expenses, medical bills, emergency repairs, or other necessities, but only after discussion and with clear boundaries. My siblings continued their monthly contributions, though they'd learned to scrutinize expenses more carefully than I ever had. In the end, that humiliating game night had forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths about our family dynamics. While the process had been painful and relationships had been damaged, it had also led to more honest and balanced interactions among all of us. I learned that respect and appreciation couldn't be bought, even with years of financial sacrifice. My family learned that taking someone's support for granted could have real consequences. And we all learned that social media could turn private family moments into public spectacles with lasting repercussions. The revenge, if it could be called that, hadn't been about punishment or retaliation. It had been about finally valuing myself enough to demand the respect I deserved, even from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't anger or confrontation. It's simply refusing to continue enabling the behavior that hurts you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.